let's talk about laptops for school. And I don't just mean high school or middle school or college. This really applies to anybody wanting a portable Mac for education. There's a lot of choices out there, so in this video, I'm going to break it down into 3 recommendations. Your budget-friendly option, your mainstream, this is the one most of you should probably get option, and your high-end option. I'm going to be telling you which model as well as which modifications you may want to consider when speccing out your Mac. So let's go ahead, jump into this with the first option on the list, which is the budget-friendly, the value Mac, and that is the classic M1 MacBook Air. This is Apple's cheapest portable Mac, which makes sense that it's the value choice for this list. It's $200 less than the new M2 MacBook Air, and you probably expected us to go with the M2 MacBook Air, but seriously, this M1 MacBook Air is a fantastic choice for a lot of people out there who just want the most cost-effective Mac that they can. It's incredibly light and slim and easy to carry around. And $200 does not seem like a big difference between the M1 and the M2 MacBook Air. But the reason that I say to get the M1 is because you can then spend that additional $200 if you want to spend it on upgrades. So you could consider adding a doubling the memory, going from 8 gigs to 16 gigs of memory for that $200, or going from the 256 to 512 gigs of storage. So if you want to spend the $200, upgrade the memory or the storage on your machine, but otherwise it is cool to stick with just the base M1 MacBook Air. Moving right along, the second option on the list, if you want to spend a bit more money, you spend a little bit more, get a slightly more powerful machine. This time is when I'm recommending the actual M2 MacBook Air. This is the one I would recommend for almost everyone out there who wants like the middle ground of the Mac. So they don't want to get the super budget-friendly option, they don't want to spend too much, they want a good one in the middle. And the M2 MacBook Air is just that. There's a lot of reasons that I love this thing. So it's got a larger screen than the M1 MacBook Air. It has MagSafe 3, which allows you to charge while using your USB-C ports to plug in accessories or a monitor or anything like that. It has a 1080p FaceTime camera, so even if you're doing school remotely or taking a Zoom call, it has a better camera than the 720p camera in the M1 MacBook Air. It has an 8-core GPU and a faster CPU and a better keyboard. So there's a lot of really nice benefits here in the M2 MacBook Air over the M1 model. Again, this is what I would tell pretty much everyone out there to buy if they're looking for just the middle ground of Macs for college. And as an extra benefit, it's in general a bit slimmer and it is lighter than the M1 MacBook Air. For the middle ground, it's usually assumed that you might want to spend a little bit more, like you don't necessarily want to get just the base MacBook Air. So our recommendations would be spending just a little bit more and opting for the 10-core GPU, that's a $100 upgrade, going for 16 gigs of the memory and 512 gigs of storage. Just kind of like a small increase across the board. Yes, you can go up to 24 gigs of memory. Yes, you can go up to like 2 terabytes of storage. But I think for most people out there, going with 512 gigs of storage and 16 gigs of memory and the 10-core GPU should be suitable upgrades without breaking the bank. That'll put you at around $1,700 for the M2 MacBook Air with the upgrades that I suggested. Finally, what happens if you want to spend more? You want to spend more than that. You don't want the MacBook Air. You want to go a little bit more powerful. And of course, a recommendation for that too. And that would be the 14-inch MacBook Pro. The 14-inch MacBook Pro. So yes, the 16-inch MacBook Pro is great. And it would be higher. So if we're looking for like the premium option on the list, the most expensive Mac you could buy, you could go with that 16-inch MacBook Pro. But since we're talking about school and education, there's no reason to go for a 16-inch MacBook Pro unless you really need just crazy performance or the bigger screen. Because you are going to be like carrying this around campus and stuff. And for me, in college, I did have a 15-inch MacBook Pro, but it was a lot to carry around, especially with textbooks and everything. So it's up to you, but the 16-inch MacBook Pro definitely has some more weight to it. The 14-inch is very nice. It has a larger screen than the MacBook Air. You have more ports, including a card reader, and you have an HDMI output. You have M1 Pro or M1 Max chips on the inside, and you have the glorious Liquid Retina XDR display, which is amazing looking and has ProMotion high refresh rates. So you get quite a few upgrades by going to the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Now, the base one, again, is very nice to upgrade to. You do have that M1 Pro in there, which is more capable than the M2 processor in the M2 MacBook Air. But there are a couple things you could consider, and honestly, with the MacBook Pro line, there's a ton of upgrade options because you can choose which processor you want in there. You can choose which screen size, the 14 or the 16, as well as configurations up to like 8 terabytes of storage. So there's a lot more options here, and it can get a bit maddening. So in general, we would say probably the base 14 is a good deal, but 16 gigs of memory, 512 gigs of storage, 8-core CPU, and 14-core GPU are probably a good option. So that's about a $2,000 machine, though it is on sale for like $1,749, which is a really good discount. So that's probably the one that we would recommend you choose. If you want to splurge a little bit more than the M2 MacBook Air, and it's on sale because it's been out for a while now, there are expected to be new, MacBook Pros with the M2 series chips, but considering the performance improvements with the M2, I think you'd be very comfortable sitting with the M1 version of these machines. So check out the MacBook Pro, 14-inch MacBook Pro for our high-end recommendation. So what do you guys think? Those are my options for your best laptops, your best Mac for school, high school, college, middle school. Let me know what you think and which your choice would be down below in the comments. And be sure, as you're looking for these Macs, take advantage of all education discounts. There's a ton of them out there. Apple is doing some, third-party retailers have some. Really do your work. We have links down below in the description for our AppleInsider price guide, where we have all the best deals that can sometimes beat out education discounts. So just check them and see what is out there before you make your purchase. Otherwise, stay tuned. I have a lot more videos coming your way.